Yeah, thank you so much for your introduction. I was studying at the art academy, like you said, and before I was studying design, and I also went to study architecture. So I was in these three fields. I was always interested in all these kind of things, and so my work is also related to all these kind of things. But in the end, of course, it is art, because I'm not interested being an architect or a designer. I want to take art as a vehicle for the things I want to do. This is why I decide then to do art. City as stage, scenography of the everyday life, choreographed spaces, that's the title of the lecture, or of our workshop, official, where I will show you some of my projects, some very briefly, just that you get an impression, but I always focus on the process of the work. So I have some material which will allow you to follow up the process. So we start. Megatons in Megadeth. What I'm interested are the modes of perception and how reality comes to us in a way. And what I do a lot is walking. So when I go to a city, I walk around and I take a lot of pictures of things which I'm interested in, and I really don't know what maybe comes out of it. So this is one piece I took in Chicago. So you have all these empty structures there, which I took and built for an exhibition out of paper. So you have like this 4-meter paper sculpture, which in the end was burned down as part of a performance to end this exhibition. So really to take more this motive of the city and have this ephemeral element, and in the end nothing stays. Teatro di Mondo, this was a project at the Museum Abteiberg in Germany, where you have this park area, and this is quite interesting because the city teared down a central block in their city center, and so there were a lot of developments in the city, and the director of the museum, which is close by, said we need also to be participating in these kind of processes, so how can we do that? Out of that emerged a project, it's called Ein Traum vom Park. That means in different stages, at first opening the museum, which is a postmodernist museum by Hans Hollein, the first one he built. And my first piece there was this Teatro di Mondo. It's more like an open structure in which different things can happen. And this was also very temporary. The next year, 2013, there was this part of the park where I was asked to develop something, and this park was more like a dark area, so drug addicts or a lot of dog shit was there, so nobody actually really went there. And if you take these water hydrants in New York, it's actually a legal act from the people who really get the city space through this kind of action, and I like that a lot. So researching the area around, there was this old swimming pool which should be teared down, so I wanted to transfer the whole swimming pool out of this building into the park, which was actually not possible, so I built it in the end, a part of it, so to activate the space. And also you see this kind of element which was really used a lot by some people. So you saw in this 1 year, something happened there, so we activated that space. That called for a next intervention or to work on that again.
And sorry, the concrete object was like found, or it was sculptured by you?
This
brick object.
This one?
No, the brick.
The brick? No, this was from a building site, which I choose. So we transported it there. So and we took. It was very anonymous, and for me it was important that you had these elements to sit on. So it had more this bench aspect, or like a thing which you can use with the body. And this was more like some broken half pipe, which was referring to the swimming pool element. And these water hydrant, every week there was 1 hour where it was activated. Unfortunately, this summer was very cool, so not so many people came there on Friday evening to cool down. Temporäre Abkühlung. Out of that, by researching the area with the swimming pool, we went there and they said, oh, it's not possible to get that because we have now a movie figure museum inside of that. But what you can get is all these elements here. And so we said, at this point it was not possible, but maybe the next year. So the work contains 5 parts. So that's the pavilion. So we went there and we saw all these things where my assistants, every piece had to be measured and put into 3D data. So out of these 3D data, the pavilion was defined. That means the height comes of the elements, how much were there. Sorry for that. So there were different parts, and the thing is that these different stories which come together in this one point. So the pedestrian came out of the light structure of the museum, so it was a one-to-one scale thing to put it into the park. Then while finding a lamp, there was this storage of old diner benches which were sold on eBay. And I think that would be a really nice thing to do these in concrete. So we took these as elements for sitting, and the pergola came out of these pipes, which also were then lying there, and every piece had to be measured and put into 3D, and we used this street lamp, which was also close there. And in the end, this ensemble came out of it. So every part has its own story or own history, which had to be put to that point. And it is really nice how it now looks totally different, but it's a place where people meet, and it's a very strange atmosphere. And then I got an email where they said, did you see on Facebook? I said, no, I quit Facebook. And then there was this party going on there, which is quite nice. So that's it. So finally, what I'm interested in is to create spaces which are then given over to the public and which are readable in really different levels, or a lot of things can happen there. And this is the Brachum Pavilion, where I then took one of these benches which was left over and created so a possibility to get these access into the park. So more this framing of a landscape, so which you have through an open roof, and so it's a very strange atmosphere which evolves there. It's more like a landed UFO in the end. Auf OFD, this is the piece you saw in Münster, and I was asked 2015 if I can do a proposal for Skulpturprojekte, and I was totally amazed, of course, and excited. And so I went to Münster a lot. So I went through this little city, and by chance I discovered this building which I really liked. So there are a lot of aspects, the 60s modernist architecture language, then the generosity, which is really difficult in this kind of small towns. And I was analyzing, and my other proposal, which I worked also pretty far, was dumped because it really didn't work out in the end, so I had to go back. And by chance, it was clear that the building was teared down. So if I hadn't been there 2 years before, it wouldn't have been possible to find this place. And it's more like the Situationisten, where they walk through cities or take some different maps of cities and then combine them to different arrangements. And this is what I'm interested in. It's taking these parts. It's not about inventing or finding forms. It's more about getting the elements which are there, maybe to extend them or bring them into another situation, and then put, it's gone, for a period of 100 days, a different element. And I wanted to use also the obelisk, and then we had some problems with the company who were tearing down the building, so they were not in the mood to help us. So once I got a call, the pylon is gone. So this was really sad, but anyhow, it was very good for the project. And I also take photos of the process where it is all in the end taken down. And here you can see they take down the building, and here's our spot where we wanted to build then the piece. And it was also a pretty simple idea to take this element and then turn it. And these are the motifs which I found on my walks, which I then use for the work. And this is the actual size of the stair which was there, but it is built really out of light and temporary material, as you can see. And on the opening, somebody came up on that, so we were sitting, he asked, there should be a sculpture around here. Can you tell us where it is? And I like that moment really a lot, because it's not cynical, it's more like, this guy, he's really now into his perception looking for sculpture. So that means he's going around and he scans everything to find a sculpture. What can be a sculpture? And I like that a lot, because it is more on a perception mode level, working with him, or in general with the people. Some which is also these elements which were there temporary, they were put there and also and the foundation is the building, so it's just scrap metal from the building. Have you seen it at night as well? No. And
the bricks were from the concrete,
no, they were from the area. So this is material where it is out of old material which they pour into these molds. But they are very flexible, and what I like about it, it's a very new system. It's like 20 years old, invented by the Dutch, of course, and it's more like a big Lego system, but it's very archaic. So you have like this, and we were also lucky, the one sponsor who wanted to give us the stones, he couldn't give us because of a high demand. So we found somebody and he said, oh, I'm really sorry, I just have these very ugly and badly poured. And this was very nice because the wall was very lively through that in the end. This is the book where the whole process is then put together. When you have the book and you go through it, it looks more like everything is planned. So this was point A and this is point B and this is the final result. But actually it is not. In the end it looks like that, but the process is more different. And this is why I do the books. For me, they are helping me to give the process a format or more like an order. So you have to give an order when you start making pages. You can always change them also in direction, but the only thing which is always the same is the size. It's 24 to 17 centimeters. So I brought some for you and then you can have a look at it. So, or they are also part from in an exhibition. Grid the City, the play called Boxmeer. So in order to, I was invited to this little Dutch town where they were more expecting some people who come there and bring their sculptures and put them there. And for me, it was more interesting to say, the city, the grid as a structure, out of that evokes a play which is more like a stage play. So the city as itself, as on the one hand, a stage, but on the other hand, also the topic of the play. And so there came these three places out of the city, which are very close connected. And there was no announcement of the exhibition, so the objects appeared, and then there were these maps all around the city. The first was Box Plaza light structure, so for 6 weeks we put these structures there and they were connected to the city light and they brought a very cold blue light to the place, and in the evening it was very strange atmosphere there, and there were more like also in daylight strange things. You really couldn't bring them together. Then there was another thing. I found this sculpture, which is also more an idea of public sculpture. And when we asked the artist if it's possible to do the piece, they said, yeah, it's possible to do it, but the city after that has to restore the sculpture. So this is vandalized. So just to pointing out the sculpture with this red. And 1.5 years later, I got this picture and they said, now we have restored the sculpture. And this is the only thing which remains in the city. So from the whole thing is the restored sculpture of, his name is Peter Kortekas. So, and no, when you have a look, so, and then it was vandalized. So it's out of some kind of plastic material, and the condition was if we do this, then they have to restore it. And 1.5 years later they did that, and I like that a lot. So that this is the only thing which remains from the structure. I like this place. I called it then the Box Plaza, because it was the only place where you have some space and you can work there, but it is mostly used then one day for market and parking spaces, so it called for a performance. but the performance also had to be in scale there. So I decided to use these machines. And here's a very quick video. So where you can see the setup was in the morning to have this half circle. Then in the afternoon we had this performance, which was about 45 minutes. And it's very simple, so it's going up and down, it's moving out, then it goes together. So it's something which could be done like endless. It's more like a gesture, or it was also had some very sacral atmosphere. And you see these guys which are dressed more like Kraftwerk, with these. And these were all amateurs, the drivers. Yeah, because I wrote a score for the whole thing. And then in the middle and then the people start clapping because they thought now it's over. But it of course went on, and now they're going out and later together then. And you see the machine, every machine was programmed by itself, so they had all their own movement. And so it was not like, you know, these commercials where cars do a ballet or this kind of thing. It had this very simple approach in it. And out of that there came more like another poetic of the dilettantism in it. So then we had the next setup, and actually after that it should have gone on or not. So that was this part. I don't know, I don't want to ruin your willpower. It's actually a work just a couple of months old, and I took this idea of taking an element in the park and take it out through these ideas of the platform and this very botanical form of that. And you have this in the internet. I found these nice benches, and it's also close to the Düsseldorf airport. So through Corona, it was very acceptable to be there, because when it should have happened before, it's like every 2 minutes you have a plane going over that, and this was at this time not possible. Ultra X Orbit, so this was close to my home. And when I moved to Düsseldorf, I liked this tower. I always liked this tower and said, that would be nice to do something with that. And then I walked around, it was 2016, and there were people who were doing something. I asked, what is going on? And they said, we are taking the bells because the whole thing will be teared down. And I said, that's interesting. So I made some phone calls if I can have the tower, and the people said, yes, of course, if you're interested. And I was very happy about that. So I started making sketches, and then there was an exhibition before tearing the whole thing down. So I just illuminated for a night the tower. And that's the video. Can we turn up the volume also? Very nice. This was the video which was shown inside. So, okay. Some other proposals, doing something with it. And at some point, I had meetings with a guy or a company who is specialized in moving buildings, and he said, that's no problem, but we now need the plans, so to do the statics, and so we can calculate the transportation of the tower. And so I had to telephone to the it's called Franziskaner, so they are monks, and they have their headquarters in Munich. So I asked them now to get the permission for these plans, and they said, no, we are afraid that some people from the newspapers come, and because they sold this really expensive piece of land in the city in the center of Düsseldorf, and nobody really should know it. So nobody was aware that so they said, no, and said, okay. So I wrote some emails, but it was clear for me this case is closed. But then there was a curator who asked me to, he knew about the project, and he did something, this was in the area of the main station, so where also the tower is, and he had, you had this project, can we do something with that? So I said, okay, I put it again on the table, and so I proposed taking the tower, and then it walks to this part. And then he said, this area is transformed, so I also made some proposals for the architecture there. And so this was the idea, to take the tower and then take it as part of a new structure. And I really like the idea that parts which are contaminated with knowledge or with a history, and then they are put also here just like 200 meters away, and they tell a story if you know it, but if you don't know it, then it's something else, and it's more interesting maybe to get it out. So here also, déjà vu, it's gone. So the next step was, there was another area which was teared down, to take some elements out of that and to recreate just the volume of the tower. So also it's more like an echo of the whole thing. So the measurement is okay, it's the same, but in the end it becomes something totally different. So we started this process, and I found some people who wanted to support this. Also, we started to do these concrete elements, and the people who supported me asked me, do you have permission to build that? And of course I didn't have them. I said, of course I have it. So otherwise we can't do this in 3 months. So we started to produce the whole sculpture, or the architectural sculpture, and which was in the 6-figure. And the day this part should be took out of the factory and the crane was ordered, the city said it's not possible to build it. So we really have to break everything down. And I was lucky because the construction guys were very cool. Otherwise, I would have been gone bankrupt. So this was also the last time I went to this kind of risk to do projects, which I really wanted to do, but it was a very nice moment to have these kind of things. And I mean, that is always the question when you work in the public space. So it's really not the money or the things you need, it's more the people which you are working with. And if you have the right guys, it doesn't matter if it's 100,000 more or less, they will do it. But if you don't have them, you really can, have the little thing and that's the end. So, yeah. We also took this nice lantern, and this was a very sad moment because for the exhibition then I had these little things which are more like a presentation of the project, and this is the architecture in the expanded field. For me, a very interesting or important aspect, because you see this architecture, sculpture, landscape, interior, these aspects to working with that or to interact with this kind of different layers in a social or economic level, because these kind of things like which you saw on the Ultra X Orbit project, it shows a specific structure of the city. So if the structure of the city would have been different, the project could have been done. So if you can do something like that, there are also more like elements which evolve or enlighten this kind of things which are normally not seen. Another aspect for the public space I'm working on for a couple of years is going back to very simple material aspects, like I draw a lot, or I start with these clay elements, then scan these in 3D. And it's a very lightful, easy way, but to find it's more like, because it's a competition, which I didn't want, to find new ways to explore materials which I haven't used before. Aus westlicher Richtung, I was invited also 2018 to Vienna, and they're building this kind of new city part. It's very large, it's like 20,000 people are living there, and when you go there and you see the Vienna avant-garde, Coop Himmelblau, Hans Hollein, you see, aha, this is the architecture of the future. That's a little bit sad. So this is the spot they gave me. And my proposal was a cloud, to build a cloud. And again, it's this really light, playful start. How can you find a way to build a cloud? And this was the idea, and in the end there should be a performance then to break it up. So you have a very compromised way of time, from an aspect of building, then standing there, and also going away. And these are tests with physical elements which were scanned and then put into the 3D structure. And also the question for the pedestrian, which actually is a very classical approach to sculpture there. And I like these elements a lot, so I proposed the pedestrian out of that. Finally, we came to this proposal, and working with the architects on that, we were way over budget. So, and I said we had 180,000 euros to start. That's something, so you can go further actually, but also there it was a very bureaucratic approach from the other side. So they said no way, you know, in Austria nobody has money and it's not possible, nobody will help us. So actually this was not possible to do. And there were then other different stages, and finally we will build this. So it's more like a hanging garden which comes out of that. And you see now with these different stages, or this always approaching something which in the beginning maybe is not possible, but I think it's very necessary to go that far, or to try it also with the moment to fail. No? And it's a little bit sad when you put a lot of work in it, but otherwise it's very difficult to go further. Under new management with Rita McBride and Mickey Damm, we founded an artist group. It's called Extension, where we proposed a project in Wiels in Brussels. And you see this is the Atomium in Brussels, where the flag of Belgium is going there. So actually the Atomium is now more like a big flagpole. So we proposed for the exhibition to take down the flag and bring it to the exhibition space, and combine this also with other materials. And Extension under new management is more like a lot of playfulness, and we try a lot to play around. So you have these cards. So we made a deck of cards with different floor plans. And then you see this aluminium-made Euro palettes. And in our storage, we have this kind of facade element. So a lot of these things were every morning by the staff put around. So they just took a card by chance, and then they moved around for a half hour the whole exhibition. And they also get very into it. It was their thing then in the end. So when we came there, they also explained us how the thing should be done. And that's very nice, because over the 6, now he looks that it's really in the right position. It became something very light. So the moving material in the building were always different constellation, also with the other artworks there.
And the parts are authentic, like a
Yes, yeah, we bought them, and we actually planned another project with them, but this also was not possible to do then. There was not enough money, but we still have the elements, and so this is a very nice one. They were documenting it every day. And to combine it with these rims, and so it's all aluminium, and the flag was also on one Euro palette. So you never know what you got.
You really managed to take down the flag from
actually I proposed to take a military helicopter and then to take it, but this was not so well perceived. So we got someone who just took it down, and it was interesting. We went there with the curator of the show, and he said, there's the flag. Tomorrow in all newspapers you will see the flag is down and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, nothing will happen. And you see how the art people are in their bubble and they think, oh, what we do is so important and everybody's watching it, and actually nobody cares. And that's the point in a way. And I think this is also why I'm so interested working in the public space or in the public sphere, because you can go in a totally different conversation. So it's not the barrier, or like in Münster, this guy who came there and was looking for the sculpture, he will never go in a museum. And of course, everything is art there. And you have people who are living there for 20 years, passing the site, and then they ask, when will this tear down? Why did they left this over from the building? So there are really a lot of different levels how you can perceive the work. And of course, when you like the international art people, so you really see, there is this connection to concept art, minimalism, or other arte povera. So you can really put it into an art historic context. So this is also possible. Niteum, the next one, so where it really Niteum. This is a sketch from Giuseppe Terragni about the Danteum. This was a structure. This should be built 1941 in Rome. So his idea was to put Dante's Divine Comedy into an architectural space. Maybe you know the piece as well, but it was never built. So it is more like a myth, or it was floating around, and there's a lot of research at Princeton or at the ETH Zurich. They did a lot of work to that. And I was really amazed by this moment of putting a literature structure into a spatial appearance. So I studied that a lot, and I was invited to this museum, which was built by Gehry, Frank Gehry, the architect. So it's a very dominant space. So all the painters which have to hang something there, that's sad. So I really did a lot of testing, and I built a model. And how can you work with the space? How can you structure the space? And really, in the end, I came to the idea to take the Paradiso, the Purgatorio, and the Inferno, so the three elements which Terragni put from Dante to the Danteum into, I called it Sudeltherme, Klapsmule, and Kaiser. So these are fictive elements of a myth, of a fictive myth. The Sudeltherme was more like a very horizontal, very vertical space. So these skylights, which are actually not known, were taken into the complete space. Yeah, we did a lot of model building. The Klapsmule was also, again, taken motifs from the urban landscape, like these pipes, and when you turn them, you have a column. And I always like these moments where you shift really just a little bit, and then something other came out of it. And the Kaiser was then filled with this kind of gravel, which you also find in houses which were teared down. So there's this palm tree, and then all these different materials. And with my brother, I have this techno band. It's called E-Techno. And so we have sound for the video. And you see here by the gravel, after 2 months, the people, they found their way through the whole thing, because for me it was very important that they can walk through that. And so everyone was looking for his own path. And just this spatial appearance of these 3 rooms, they tell a story. So you are the protagonist of your own story. So you can enter the space and then it's just red. So what do you do with that? So it's actually a very archaic impression from space or color. And then you see more these motifs, and it's like an absurd theater in the end. And we also have the book there, and the end of the book is the Niteum 2, or the Niteum 2, where these spaces were formed into an architectural narrative. And it's more like a glimpse what can be done if in an appropriate frame the thing can be built. Parallel to that, I was working on a ballet piece with a choreographer for the Deutsche Oper am Rhein. And at this time, I was very interested in these textile spaces from Lilly Reich and Mies van der Rohe. Also the connection of the human figure and architecture. So we developed also going, or let's say, to find a language between a choreographer and an artist. It was very difficult because we have different ideas of the body, we have different ideas of space, also of actually working, and so we had to start talking about atmosphere. So how can we find a ground where we talk, and like light atmosphere or movement of plants underwater. And she's from Barcelona. She brought the Barcelona pavilion from Mies van der Rohe, of course, and Georg Kolb's Morning. And I went to Berlin, and there is a set of morning and evening, both together in a very nice setup of 20s architecture. And so I took one of these floor plans from Mies and transformed this into a structure for the space. So we have the space structure, then the improvisation of the dancers, and the music structure. And when we started to work on the piece, Virginia started with some improvisation, then my brother did the music part, then she started another dancing or choreography on the piece. And so related to these sculptures and the architecture, you see at first just the movement of the persons, then the whole architecture evolves, or the space, and in the end it goes away and we have another choreographed set. Posidonia as the title of the piece. And you see it's everything very simple, easy movements. So these are the related sculpture elements which always appear in the piece. And for me it was very interesting, the interaction between the dancers, like in the space itself, but also when the structure evolves, the interaction between the choreography and the structure. So it was not like there's the dance, there's the music, there's the structure or the stage. So we did everything parallel, and in the end it turned out really nice. Yeah, actually there's also music to it, but I don't know, it doesn't. Sorry? No, it was not techno music. It was some electronic music, but also a lot of drums, a very rhythmic, easy sound. And we had like a climax. So it started more like noise, a very loud noise in the beginning. Then we had just simple rhythms, very slowly. Then it started to get very intense. In the end, we had this climax, and then it was gone. So it's also when you see the idea of the music, of the movement, and of the structure, they are actually pretty simple ideas. But in the combination and bringing them together, the intensity of the piece, also with this very precise set elements, came out then pretty good for that. And finally, the last thing, and then I'm done for today. It's
that's what the man asked.
It's Dantor Teatrino Scientifico. That's wrong, because this is just 1 week old, and I was invited to a competition in Hamburg, and it's a train station, and you see a very ugly environment, but they have these vitrines which are over 100 years old, and they wanted to have a concept, so they asked different artists to propose something, and I think for me it was very difficult to enter the whole thing, and you have like this actually more presentation of things or of goods, and so I asked, what is the historic context of that? It's the Wunderkammer, which I'm always very attracted to, so like just a collection of different things, or like more in the museums context, historic museums or natural. And then there is also Aldo Rossi, who built this model space called Teatrino Scientifico, where he could show his ideas to the archetypes of architecture. And then there is Ernst Haeckel. He was a scientist, and with his microscope he really looked for these kind of, they are called radiolarien, very, very small organisms. And he did these tableaus, and this was the 19th century, so they were always looking for categories and for elements, how they can put them together. And I was, for a time, researching, or I buy sometimes 3D models on websites. And there's also always this moment of categories. So I find this was a very nice aspect to put them together. And the concept is these found elements, or more like a ready-made, which are virtual, so you can buy them online and then you print them by yourself. And so you don't have to figure something out what you will put in there. And this is the scheme. You have this vitrine, then there is more like a frame where the 3D prints were put on. And you here see Thingiwares, you may know, or CG Trader, where you buy these elements. And when you consider these vitrines more like a stage, or more like different stages which are interacting together, then they also become titles, Atlantica, Aurora, which are islands. They have been appeared on maps, but they actually didn't exist. So it's more like an imaginative title. So you see, this is a concept study. Can this concept be on a visual level consistent? And these are the proposals. Different. These are the tableaus. One of the prints to visualize that. Then this landscape, it is more like out of different structures put together, or then objects which can be more in a larger scale. But the most important thing is that it's visually consistent and is a really strange collection of objects and sceneries, which you also can find in diorama. This, for example, is a space station which you can buy, and it's more like an organic object. I also propose to do a book which you can buy directly in the train station. The second part, they ask the artist to think beyond this frame of the vitrines. So I said, this is also rebuilt at the moment. Why not taking the elements and print them in a larger scale with 3D concrete. So there are experiments with that and a lot of research, but you don't have a standard at the moment. And take the elements then more to out of this inside space. Outside. Now we're back to the atomium, and the atomium is also a model. It's an iron atom, and it's 165 million times larger than the original. So I'm always interested in these kind of structures, or actually also useless structures, which can be added then there, or they can also have a use. And also here, I like the approach of taking this from the Thingiwares or wherever you get this, and then putting them into this other context together. And that's it. You're welcome.